Hi, I'm Jane, and this is our next episode of the podcast series for Access Courses Online. And today I'm talking to
Candy, and I am a freelance graphic designer and illustrator.
It's very exciting. I don't think we've spoken to anybody in the creative space yet, so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Um, so, Candy, I was saying in our conversation before, the reason that we want to hear more about your story is you are talking to us as a professional in industry at the moment. So, whilst you haven't necessarily got experience of an access course or access courses online, you've taken the route of higher education to kind of get you to where you are.
My ultimate goal would be to establish myself as a freelance illustrator. That's like my dream. And I'm still very much in like a transitional period where I'm doing lots of graphic design work and a bit of illustration. And to be honest, it's kind of great that I can do both. And I love doing graphic design and I love doing illustrations. So, I don't really feel like I can complain. It's taken a lot of years to get here to this point. And I get to do both. And when I do illustration, I can use all my graphic design sensibilities, all my skills in that, to thinking about how I would execute an illustration project, which if you just went in straight into illustration, you might not have a set of skills to think about how an illustration starts and how it gets produced in the world and how it gets experienced.
Yeah, well, I've spoken to a couple of people for whom that journey, I think sometimes when we start with ideas, we think things will be more linear than they necessarily are. And actually, it's been really interesting, and my own story isn't that dissimilar. Many, many times where I thought was going isn't necessarily where I've ended up. I've taken many a detour, but the experience and value that I've accrued along the way, I think has kind of made me better at where I am now, albeit not in a straight line. And so is it okay to ask what illustration project you're working on at the moment? Because it's really exciting, or do you not want to share that?
Yes. So, I've had a bit of time to work on my own project. And I think this is what's so great about being freelancers, is giving me a little bit of space to explore my own ideas. And I wrote and illustrated a children's picture book. Because I just kept thinking of this story and these words kept coming to me and these ideas of these visuals. And I just needed to get it out. And now that I've made it, it's going ahead to be published. And I'm just in the point where we're waiting for it all to come together and be published. And soon it'll be out there in the world. And I'm opening this door into a world of publishing and children's picture books that I never really thought I would do that. But I think it really is about just going with your gut, going with what you're feeling, whatever's resonating, what's coming up, and just putting it out there and seeing what happens.
But I just think that is just so wonderful to be able to literally realize your dream, to be able to kind of be responsible for this new expression of creativity, and the content, the story behind why you've created it will be of support to so many families as well. So that's just amazing. You must feel, how do you feel now in comparison to sort of graduating, Candy, in 2008 when the recession meant all kinds of weird things? It must feel so strange.
When I graduated, it was just such a low. It felt like such a kick in the gut.
Yeah.
It was like, I'm never even going to be a graphic designer. I'm never even going to get a job in the creative field. And I do really believe that if you want something bad enough, if you just keep going at it, it will come to fruition. And I think
Yeah.
that's what I've always done. I've always just kept going, and maybe I've gone through periods of time where I haven't done really self-assigned projects. Other things have taken over. And I think it's really frustrating going through jobs when you feel like you're not fulfilling your creative outlook.
Yeah.
But it's all part of the process. It's all
Yeah.
frustrating as it is. It's all, you're still learning something as you go, and you will reach a point that you can start to go out a bit more and
Yeah.
express yourself a bit more, do projects that you maybe want a bit more.
And in this
Just got to,
conversation, I'm just kind of realizing that actually, when it comes to the plans that we have for ourselves and the dreams that we have for ourselves, we have no control over the recession. We have no control over the pandemic. So you've kind of got to be true to that dream inside you and do your best to honor that, because knowing that there may be things around the corner that um we can't account for. Like, I don't know about you, but when I worked in recruitment during the recession, and it was surreal because I was born in the 80s when things were tough, but they didn't seem as tough as they were in 2008. Do you know what I mean? It just felt that
yeah,
everybody lost then, whereas in the 80s, people, I don't know, people had savings, and at least that was good. Whereas now then in 2008, it just seemed like it was kind of bleak for everybody. So I don't know, I think I've gone on a bit of a tangent there, but I was just thinking that
no,
so when I talk to people and they tell me their different stories, it feels like there's almost always something that you could use as a reason to go, oh no, that's a bit too hard. And they are
yeah,
absolutely valid reasons. The recession would be a completely valid reason to just getting a job, regardless of what the job was, because they were few and far between. But actually, kind of staying true to your dream and your passion for creativity, like you've done it, you've lived
yeah,
it, you got there regardless of the curveballs that the universe threw at you.
yeah. And I guess I probably only feel like I've really arrived here where I can do the illustration and graphic design because I went freelance.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of that trying to work out whether I could even make that leap. Some of that came out of the circumstances of the pandemic,
Yeah.
that I had to work by myself, isolated. And, there was a realization that I didn't necessarily need lots of people to enhance what I was doing or support what I was doing. I could do it by myself. So there was a little realization there. There was also
Yeah.
a realization that I didn't mind working from home. I didn't
Yeah.
necessarily need to be around people every day.
I mean, that worked out well because you couldn't go anywhere else for a couple of years.
Yeah. I also read a really great book which is called Everything's Figure Outable, and that really changed my perception on things. I think reading is a really great source of trying to
Mm.
overcome things or mental blockages that you have in your mind. And part of this book was about writing down sort of limiting beliefs that you have in yourself, and then crossing them out and saying, that's rubbish, that's rubbish, that's rubbish. And
Love
that
that.
really helped me. And I thought, yes, I can do this. Of course, I can do illustration professionally. Like, I don't need to just stay in graphic design. I can do that as well.
Yeah. And I guess what that means as well is that the things that you can't cross out, you can accept as being outside of your control. And you can say, okay, well, I can't control this thing. Let me look for ways to overcome it. I'm going to need help with this particular thing because I don't have the means to fix that, but it's not going to stop me from getting where I want to go. Oh, that's really good. I'm going to put that in my wish list. And then just my last question, which I think is a bit of a tricky one, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if there are other young creatives out there who are thinking, sort of toying with the idea of of going down a higher education route, be it a foundation qualification or a university qualification, is there any, it's so massive to say, advice that you would give to young
Yeah,
creatives? Or but do you get what I'm trying to say?
it's
Is there
yeah.
anything that you think young creatives need to carry this nugget with them?
Well, how do I talk about this? Because I feel like it's quite a big thing, and what I studied at university to working professionally, there is definitely a gap in that you might be answering briefs, but they're not necessarily for a specific audience or company. And I think this is maybe the gap that I've seen, that when you work for an agency, that
Yeah.
you're constantly answering work to a client. And if you haven't got the portfolio to demonstrate that you can do that, you're already on the back foot. So, I mean, I feel that doing my degree was completely worth it, because I got to practice having a brief and answering it. To put it simply, that's what we did. And if I was to go straight from A level into an agency, I just don't think it would be such a jump. It would be such a challenge. So if I had to think of advice for any young creative person, whether you choose to get more experience through university or jump straight into it, is you have to have a portfolio that shows that you understand it, you understand how to answer a brief, whether that's very small and simple. It can be enough for someone employing you, but you need to have something solid, really, to show a potential employer.
Yeah, the more the more diverse or versatile your portfolio, the more, I guess, employable you are. And I think in creativity, I think I think I've touched on it before, but I think there's a really interesting duality between honoring your creative expression and being able to have a paid creative role. And sometimes there might have to be a trade-off, but in both instances, it's always within you. So yeah, I think, I really feel, it's a big thing to say you're living the dream, but I feel like you kind of are, in that you get to live your creativity, sometimes doing work that doesn't necessarily connect with you, but you enjoy. And then in other ways, with your book, something that really feeds your soul, and all of your skills have brought you to that. So yeah, I think that's really exciting. I think it's really affirming for lots of young creatives out there to go, right, okay, I can be Candy.
I mean, maybe it's about going back to that spectrum and thinking about, if you're creative, where do you sit on that spectrum of fine art to graphic design to somewhere in the middle? And as long as you're doing what you're passionate about, what you love, whether that's drawing, illustrating, painting, screen printing, and you're sharing it in the world, you're making work, and people will be able to see what you can do.
Yeah, I love it.
And hopefully that will translate professionally as well.
Oh, Candy, I've really appreciated your time and your story. And like I say to everybody, because I just get so inspired by everybody's stories, I say to kind of everybody, there will be so many young Candies out there who haven't, who kind of excel, who tolerate some subjects and excel in creative ones. So to hear your story will be affirming to kind of all those people that are musing over that creative route. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And I guess watch out for the book.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Candy Bamber crossing your field of vision. You go, oh, I saw her on that podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.